Tim Entwistle is a highly respected author, broadcaster, botanist, and garden expert who has held senior roles in three of the world's leading botanic gardens. The most recent was director and chief executive of the Royal Botanic Gardens Victoria from 2013 to 2023. Tim is now in a new chapter of life, and it sounds amazing. And he's here today to tell us all about it. I'm Ian Bunston. Welcome to Monday Matter. Welcome, Tim. Great to have you back again.
It's always a pleasure, Ian.
Tim, you're having a remarkable time. I'm really quite excited to have this chat this morning. You've just come back from a tour in England. Tell us about it.
Yeah, look, it's something I was doing while I was still director of the Botanic Gardens in Melbourne. I started to take on this, a job, I guess, a second job, but something I enjoyed, which was leading garden tours. And I did 2 garden tours to Spain while I was working. Then we had, of course, COVID sort of stopped all that for a couple of years. Now that I've left the gardens, I'm in kind of semi-retirement, as I call it. I went off to England early this year with a group called ASA Travel. So they're called Australians Studying Abroad, and they pride themselves in having tours that are fun and enjoyable, and you see gardens, but you also learn a bit about how gardens are made and about plants. So anyway, we had a couple of weeks at some of the great botanic gardens like Sissinghurst or Great Dixter, people might have heard of. We went to Kew Gardens, of course. We went to Oxford to see gardens around there. Lovely trip, and some, England has these such spectacular, beautiful gardens. Gardens of everyone has a garden in England, and the very best of the very best in the world.
So you get to take a group of people on a garden tour and tell them all about it. What a fantastic position to have.
Isn't it? When I first did it to Spain, it was which sounds a bit odd, a learning experience for me as well. I mean, I'd been there before, but you can never have been to every garden, and they're always a bit different. So you spend a bit of time preparing, which I really enjoy, and then sharing the knowledge that you have with others. But as you're kind of hinting at there, it's great fun as well to be sort of have a job or a role to go to lead through or take people into these beautiful places.
We've got lots of people listening in today. I'm sure they're at a stage in life where they're doing lots of travels. Who knows? They may join you on one of these. Now, currently at the moment, apparently you are preparing for a tour to Morocco and New Zealand. What's happening there?
Yeah, look, this is my next 2 tours to Morocco and then New Zealand, so separately. But to Morocco is a place I haven't been to yet, which might again seem a little bit odd to be leading a tour. But the gardens there are not dissimilar to the south of Spain, so a lot of influences from Islamic gardening in Spain. And Morocco is a place I've always wanted to visit. So I'm doing a lot of homework, actually, even now. It's not till March next year, but a lot of homework on the history of Morocco, so ancient history, old history, but also recent European history, about the gardens, about the culture in a place, and about the natural vegetation, because that's the other thing you will go through what are called the Atlas Mountains through Morocco. We'll go through on the edge of the Sahara Desert. So you're seeing all these amazing landscapes, which have plants, of course. And, so I'm learning up a bit on those. So that's to Morocco. And then later in the year to a whole lot of gardens in the South Island of New Zealand, which is, again, another beautiful part of the world and an opportunity. And I should have had too, I go with my wife, Linda, who's manages the tours now. So I sort of do the leading the tour in terms of giving talks and talking about plants. And Linda, who's actually knows a bit about plants herself anyway, is responsible for getting everyone out of the hotel on time, making sure that all the places are booked and ready for us. And, it sounds easy, but anyone who's planned a holiday knows it's not.
Now, it's very interesting to hear you talk about Spain and Morocco and Islamic influence. How is that different for the Royal Botanic Gardens here in Melbourne?
Look, it's some of the same things, we learn from places like around the Mediterranean because our climate's not that dissimilar. But they're often courtyards, so they're often surrounded by buildings. They're cool. They're trying to keep, they're hot places. There are always perfume. So you get a lot of citrus and citrus flowers and lemons and and oranges and that kind of thing. Also it's interesting with water, which is in short supply, but it always tends to be gentle trickles of water and just quietly bubbling in the background. So they would never have a big fountain in the middle of a garden. You'd always have a trickle of water. So there's this mix of sort of shade, trickles of water, often quite linear sort of off gardens. They're not ornate in terms of not big curved gardens like you might get in England. So there's a kind of style of garden, and the plants themselves are ones we would be familiar with here, and that includes, as I say, the citrus and olives and some of the tougher plants, but also a few flowering plants as well because they like colour in them too.
Mm. Now, Tim, you've been spending some time doing some writing, I believe. Have I got this right? You've written a book called The Skeptical Botanist.
I have. So I wrote just before I left the gardens. I wrote a memoir which was evergreen, the botanical life of a plant punk. So that was more a lot, about my life in botanic gardens. And over the last year, I've been writing a book of essays, which is called The Skeptical Botanist. And the idea is that I just gently tease apart a few questions around, should you plant by the phase of the moon, or can you water your plants during the day when the sun's on them? All these kind of, things that people often ask about. And I'm not in it to kind of dispel myths in a aggressive way, but just to gently pull them apart and see what makes sense and what doesn't. That's been great fun. Half the essays are actually ones that I've published already in Gardening Australia magazine. Sometimes is opinion pieces in newspapers. The other half are new essays I've written, and takes on what makes a good garden, what should we plant in gardens, and for example, I've often talked a bit about we should be comfortable growing Australian plants, but also plants from other places and mixing it up. And so I sort of talk a little bit about that as well. So that's I finished writing, and it's with CSIRO, who are hoping to bring it out early next year.
Sounds fascinating. Have to keep looking out for that one. Now, obviously, you've lived in Melbourne for many, many years, but you're about to embark on a move to Barrel. Well, what's behind all this?
I want to be closer where Bradman played his cricket. I thought it might improve my scores, but no. The reason going to Barrel, which is in Southern Highlands, an hour or an hour and a half south of Sydney, is a lovely place with beautiful gardens. But the main attraction there is I have a daughter who lives nearby in a town called Mittagong, and she has a granddaughter who's 6 months old. And my son is in Sydney in Marrickville, and he has a 7-year-old son. So our family basically are up near Sydney. When we moved, when I lived up in Sydney and was working in Sydney, our kids came with us and they stayed there. So it's an opportunity now that I've left the gardens here to move closer to them. So that's really the driving force. And I'll still do my writing and a few other things, including I've been a bit involved in with the Commonwealth government, chairing a thing called the Harbour Trust, and that's around the harbour in Sydney. It's called the Sydney Harbour Federation Trust, and I only just mentioned that because that's sort of drawing me up towards Sydney, so you can see I'm trying to find things to do up that way as well.
I can fully understand the pull of grandparenting and wanting to be with the family up there. So fair enough. Now, this is what retirement looks like for you, Tim, it sounds. Is this really retirement, or have we missed something? I mean, since the finishing up of the gardens in Melbourne?
I think it's a good picture of it. I mean, I do sort of say semi-retired, and I'm not one of these people that has to sort of show that I'm still doing things. I don't mind that. In fact, I'm quite enjoying doing a bit of reading and sitting around, getting up later, reading the papers, things that I've always, it really enjoy. So, but I do need to, I like these things that I'm doing, the writing I really enjoy, and being involved in this Harbour Trust, of course, and then also with family. I'm hoping I can get a sort of a nice mix of these things to do for the next few years, particularly while I'm, sort of enjoying those other roles. So I think that's, to me, it's almost a transition, I suppose, in a way, because I think I'll start to do more of the reading, more of the grandchild caring, and less of the work in a few years, I'm sure.
It sounds like a remarkable transition. Again, there'll be people watching this today who may be just about to embark on retirement. Would you have any tips for anybody who's entering into that space?
Look, the only one it would be not to, well, not to overplan. I mean, I think it's great to think about, but not just to kind of take time to see what happens. And I wasn't quite sure how it would work for me, and I'm not sure if I was looking forward to it or not. And then I realized, I can do some of the same things that I was doing, but do more of some and less of others. So I no longer have meetings and budgets so much, and that's a great pleasure in life. But it's so I think there's a little bit of planning. I mean, if anyone would say you should plan for retirement, but I think also just get ready to go with the flow and enjoy those things that you've always wanted to do. So take up a couple of those opportunities and not be scared to sort of do a mix of things. I don't need to sound busy, but it's what I like to do.
Without it, it doesn't feel like business because they're your passions, and so you can get totally absorbed. And look, it sounds like a remarkable transition, and certainly I'm great interest in these garden tours. Now, before I let you go this morning, on my desk here, I do have a plant. It's a little bit obscure, and what you can do, of course, for those who may be aware of this, is that if you've got an iPhone, you can take a picture of that plant. And once you've got that picture, then you can brush up on it, and then it actually gives you the name. So, Tim, I've done this morning, and I'm just wondering if you've got any idea. Can you see this this plant here? Is that looking a little bit obscure? It's not coming up on my screen. But do you know the name of this particular plant by any chance?
Look, I know it's an arum lily of some kind because I've got one in my front garden at the moment that's looking very like that, although it's a slightly different species. I mean, Syngonium is one of the things that could be, but also there's quite a few arums as well. But I reckon from that distant, vague view there, your app will probably confirm it's Syngonium.
You are correct. Well done. Uh, so that's a little tip for other folk. If you've got an iPhone, and maybe you can do it with Androids as well, but you can actually take photographs of plants if you're not sure their name, brush up, and then you can find that name. Tim, been an absolute pleasure to talk with you this morning and to hear of what your retirement or your semi-retirement is looking like. It sounds absolutely wonderful, and we wish you all the best, particularly as you get closer and move closer to your grandchildren and family. Thank you for being a guest here at Monday Matters today.
It's always a pleasure, and thank you very much for hosting and inviting me. Yeah, lovely. Great to see everyone too.